Bitcoin fixes every problem with money. It fixes every problem with money. Money needs to be, I'm going to say the properties and, what money needs to be able to do again. Money needs to be a medium of exchange. I need to be able to, give you something of value for something that is either a good or a service. It needs to be a store of value.
What are your thoughts on what Bitcoin entrepreneurship might look like going down the line?
The first thing is identify the problem. And then second thing is find the solution. And then the third thing is just start building it, right? I look up to guys like, Jack Mallers and like what he's doing with Strike. I look up to guys like, Jack Dorsey with what he's doing with Block. And like now he's just enabled like, merchants to be able to like, accept the Bitcoin. Like he already had it with Cash App where like the problem is being able to buy Bitcoin. Now we need to have this, system where the, actual like, society can now operate within Bitcoin purchases and like, continue to like spread that out. So like, there's going to be a lot of problems. There's going to be a lot of solutions. So identify them and just start, just get it out there and just start.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Orange Peel Podcast. I'm your host, Nicki, and today I'm joined by Tosin, who is a software engineer who's building Odyssey, a mobile app designed to teach Bitcoin in a way that actually makes sense for beginners. Tosin went from being a software engineer at Microsoft to a Bitcoin builder, and what I really love about his story is that it's not just about coding and it's not just about what he built itself. It's about the conviction and the curiosity and being able to create your own path to entrepreneurship in the Bitcoin space. So we're going to dive all into his journey, how Odyssey gamifies learning Bitcoin, which I think is just so cool, and what he thinks that our generation has the advantage with in learning about Bitcoin. Honestly, like this is just going to be a super fun, laid back conversation. I really hope you guys enjoy it because I am so excited to have this. Tosin, thank you so much for joining me today. I am so ready to hear everything that you've been working on.
Nicki, thank you for having me on the podcast. And first, I have to give you your flowers. Like we were saying before we even started the podcast, I've been watching a lot of your episodes and like seeing you as a Gen Z Bitcoiner as well, and seeing how young you are, and you're like, you have this voice and you're changing the lives of other people. And like, even you right now bringing me on the podcast, like you're giving me a platform to be able to, share my story and share Odyssey with the world. And I appreciate you. So just guys, give you that.
Thank you. Yeah, it's really great to be able to have these conversations, especially with like other Gen Z, which is why like as soon as you sent me the DM, I was like, absolutely, I need to have you on. And I tried out, the version of your app that you sent me at the time, and I thought it was really cool, and I apologize I haven't been able to try out the latest version yet, but I am so looking forward to it, and that is like on my to-do list to do as soon as my exams are done and everything. But let's start at the very beginning. When did Bitcoin first hit for you? When were you first introduced to it?
Everyone has a journey with Bitcoin. Everyone is going to have an Odyssey with Bitcoin. Hence the name of the app. And I remember it was 2017. I had a friend named Adam, and we were in high school together, right? And we had PE class, and Adam was always really into business and making money. Funny story enough, we worked at the same country club. Like we were working for minimum wage, and we were just like, how can we make more money? He came to us in PE one day, and he was like, hey guys, like I just found this cool app. It's called Coinbase, and you can like buy cryptocurrencies and you make a bunch of money. And this was during the big like 2017 crypto bull run, right? And I'm like, wait, so you're just telling me that I just got to give them money and I multiply my money? And he's like, yeah, that's exactly what it is. And I was like, you do it first and you let me know how it goes for you and we'll see. So Adam purchased some Bitcoin, and maybe like an hour or so later, like his mom called and she was like, Adam, did you use our credit card to buy some virtual coin or something? Like, this is a scam. And I was like, okay, well, I see how it went for him. Let me stay away from that. 2 years later, I get to college and I have a friend who's like teaching me how to like invest in like foreign exchange. Anyone who remembers like, during the COVID wave, the big Forex wave, you would have to send Bitcoin to like your MetaTrader 4 account where you'd be able to like, transact and like do trades and everything there. And like, I was ignoring the Bitcoin and I was using the money to like, essentially just like, gamble in a sense where, I'm losing money every week. And it's like, my goal is to make money, but I keep losing money. Like, why does this keep happening? Right. And, one day in like one of the, group chats I was in, some guy was like, dude, just hold on to the Bitcoin. you can use it for things other than just like transferring it to like the other place. You can actually use it as like, kind of a store of value or like a gold or something in a sense, right? And I was like, this guy, he might be onto something, because like I was looking at the price of Bitcoin then, and it went from like 3,000 to 9,000, 6,000. Like the price is getting more, but I'm still using the same amount of money to be able to buy the Bitcoin. But I'm just like, wait, if I would have just held on to it, are you telling me I could have just like profited? So I did that for like maybe like a couple months or so. And I think this is when, the big crash happened, when it went down to 3,000. And I just held on to Bitcoin in like my Cash App account, and it skyrocketed. And I was like, he was right. Um, and then outside of that, like I was just like, what really is this thing, Bitcoin? And this is, kind of what put me down like in a really, really big rabbit hole. I discovered people like Michael Saylor, Jack Dorsey, and just like learning more and more about what the actual technology and software behind Bitcoin is, especially myself too. I studied computer science, and yeah, that was it was been a big journey. And like ever since then, that's what led me here.
It sounds like you've had quite the story with Bitcoin. It's always cool when I see, like, when I talk to people our age, because they always tend to discover Bitcoin like through one of their friends, and it's because one of them like invested in like crypto, or it was like, have you seen this thing that just went like 4x or like 10x or something? Which is just a little bit different to the the Bitcoiners that are a little bit older to us. But when did Bitcoin go from being, kind of like an investment or a way to make money to something that you realized you wanted to start building with?
That's a good question. And the moment where I kind of saw that it wasn't really an investment is when I actually started learning about what it is. It is essentially a decentralized peer-to-peer currency where I can actually, I think one of the issues with like Bitcoin adoption really, and like why people are so like kind of maybe skeptical about it initially, is because they see one of two things. They're either going to see a number or they're going to see a triangle. What do I mean by that, right? They're going to see a number and they're going to see, oh, this is $117,000. I can no longer afford to invest in this. This is what they see, right? And they're going to say I don't have this money, so therefore, like, I've already missed the train. I can't do it anymore. Or they're going to see a triangle where they say, you only would have made money if you would have gotten in early on. Or you hear about these like, these headlines and these scams, or like crypto rug pull, whatever. This is a scam. What people need to start kind of seeing Bitcoin as a network. And I believe it was but some guy by the name of like Andres. He was on a podcast with Joe Rogan, and he explained it as a network where it connects people. And that's where I started understanding where like Bitcoin isn't an investment; it's actually an asset. It's actually money. It's what makes it's what money is designed to be. And obviously, like I said, like the Bitcoin that I had went up in United States value, but at the end of the day, I'm still a part of the network. I'm still a part of the network that allows me to transact and have freedom from the control of like a government or a bank that, limits my money or power to be able to, transact with other people.
That's really, really cool. I think it was kind of the same thing for me, not exactly the same thing, but kind of. I discovered Bitcoin like back in 2022, and my family they're big time Bitcoiners, so I've always like kind of had the name around the house and everything. And my parents were very, very big on financial literacy and all that. But I really dove into Bitcoin for a paper that I wrote during my high school. I did the IB program, so we had to write this like 4,000 word research paper and everything, and I chose to write it on Bitcoin. And I was kind of looking at the same thing, right? I was like, it's a decentralized digital currency, and that's so perfect for an age where all of us basically live online. We're so accustomed to everything being digital. If you really think about it, right, the money system that we use right now is essentially digital. The credit that you spend, it's not really ever you're not really ever touching it. It's not really feasible money that you are like storing in a bank or cash or something like that. Anyway, so long story short, I think it's so cool to talk to actual software engineers and people who are actually interested in CS, because they always have a very unique perspective when it comes to understanding Bitcoin, and they always tend to go like head first into the tech angle of it, as opposed to understanding why it fixes all the problems that we have with fiat, which it's a really cool perspective to have on this channel, and I haven't had much of that yet. So Yeah, I mean, what I want to ask you, like you obviously you're an engineer, and a lot of people they think Bitcoin is just finance, it's just economics, but it really is pure tech. It's pure code essentially. So as CS majors, you probably studied distributed systems, cryptography, networks, game dev, all of that. And the way I see it, Bitcoin really ties everything together, right? So, I mean, what did you learn about like computer science by actually building in Bitcoin? Is there anything that you discovered that you were like, whoa, this is really interesting, and I never would have thought of that had I not known about Bitcoin?
It's a good question. So when I believe it was my senior year of college, I took a class. I believe it was, if you went to Purdue, you would know what it was. It was ECE 404, and I believe it was like something around like security and everything else, right? And it had to do with like encryption, and we were kind of like learning like how encryption works, what is SHA-256, how these kind of like how password encryption works when you like sign up for like a website and things like this. When it comes to like Bitcoin and like just the engineering behind it, it's the best money that will ever exist, that has ever existed, because of that security aspect in it too. So I remember doing like a project for the class, and it was around like SHA-256, and like when I was able to see like, oh, it's really impossible, it's almost pretty much close to impossible to be able to like crack this encryption, to be able to do this. In Bitcoin, it also incorporates that same encryption logic. This is something that we need to like continue to work for. And yeah, it led me to like obviously I didn't start working on the app until this year, but like understanding about encryption and like protection, and the other apps that I've kind of built around like password logic and things like this, like I understand how important security is.
Yeah, security is really important, and I think it's a growing concern with a lot of people that aren't as into tech as you might be. Um, a lot of people are worried about adopting a money that is entirely digital, adopting a currency that is untouched by humans altogether, right? The way Bitcoin works, it's designed to be completely independent of actual people, which I think is super cool. And I think it's, the closest that we're ever going to get to an objective form of money. But, I understand the sentiment behind it, that, it scares people who are like, but, the computers are going to like take over the world, and they're
Take
going to know
over and
everything
stuff. All
about
this,
us.
yeah,
Exactly, right? Like they're
yeah.
going to steal all of your data and everything. But Bitcoin is a little bit different. The way I see it, it is digital, but it is decentralized, and I think that aspect of decentralization is so important. So my next question is basically just to someone who is worried about computers taking over the world and all of that, how would you kind of sit them down and explain that Bitcoin isn't really something that they have to worry about?
You asked really good questions. I got to do that again. So like one of the things, especially too, and this is one of the reasons why I wanted to create the app, is to show them that it is your friend. Bitcoin is the best friend that you can have, right? We need to understand what is money, right? We need to understand what is money, what is a problem, what is a solution. What's the solution? Bitcoin. Now let's go back to the first two. What is money? This is going to be kind of a little soliloquy, but it is what it is. I like your podcast. We're going to continue doing this, right? So in the beginning of time, we've always had a society where we have goods and services, right? We need to have a way to exchange value for those goods and services. If you have those headphones, right, and I want those headphones, you're going to want something of equal value for them, right? So we had the barter system originally, where you would trade goods and services directly, right? But you have this problem of coincidence of wants, where you may not want maybe an iPhone for your headphones, you may want something better. And then we came up to like different ideas, and we had these evolutions of different like trades, where we would use maybe seashells, because it's hard to get these seashells from the ocean. You have to go and travel 200 miles and so on and so on, right? Or you have like you're trading chickens, but then you have to like it's kind of hard to like kind of keep track of all those things. And especially when you have like a system or a population, or whatever the case may be, is where like some things may be scarce on one place, but they're very plentiful on another place. That's not a fair distribution, right? So then we came up with the standard of having something that has equal value. or not equal value, but something that is very valuable. And we kind of landed on gold as being that thing, right? And a lot of governments will like back their money on gold. They have a gold standard where it's like, okay, every dollar or, currency that I have is pegged to this thing of value, right? And when you have that, you have a fair distribution now, and you have something that is, equivalent to what is it's backed by. Now we need to like look at the problem. We have societies where we have to be able to like, pay for different wars. We need to, be able to pay for different like services and other things where sometimes there is this temptation to print more of something that we can already have. You can't create more gold, but you can print more paper, or you can, create more of the currency, but it's going to be debase it, because as you start to inflate it and you add more to the circulation of the money, that money needs to go somewhere, and that causes that increase in prices of like different things and so on, right? So this is where now we have that problem of inflation. We're going to get into more of these problems, right? And now we live in a society today where there is so much inflation, there's so many problems and so many challenges where, the circulation has gotten out of control. We need a solution, something that is finite enough, something that is scarce enough, and has all the properties of money that allow us to be able to, really adapt into a rural society. And that's where we have Bitcoin.
I think that might be the best explanation of not only inflation, but just money and what we use money for that, I've had on this channel so far. So really, thanks for doing that. I do want to start talking about your app, because, I tried it out last week and I worked through kind of like the beginner modules that you have, and it's so fun. As I mentioned earlier, right? Like it totally gamifies the whole aspect of learning Bitcoin, which is super, super cool to see. And it's exactly what we need to make Bitcoin more accessible to Gen Z, in the space. And so let's talk about, what happens when we have a Gen Z engineer like yourself who actually starts building. A lot of people our age, they think that entrepreneurship, specifically tech entrepreneurship, is building the next AI startup, the next ChatGPT wrapper. But you chose to go the Bitcoin route, and you chose to teach and educate, which is still niche. It's still something that we don't have a lot of. So, let's talk about what you've built. Let's talk about Odyssey. Do you just want to give an explanation on what it is? I think you can do it better than I can.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm going to start off with the reason of why I wanted to even start building in the first place, right? Anyone who knows me, I'm going to share this with all my friends. Anyone who knows me, they're going to know that I've brought up Bitcoin at least maybe a million times to them. I don't stop talking about it. It's like really part of my personality. It's something that like I really want to share with my friends in the world. And the thing is, I've had kind of like a hard time sometimes orange pilling some of my friends where they're like still seeing that number or that triangle rather than seeing the network or the web. And I was like, why is this, education gap still prevalent here? Why is it that they don't want to, even want to learn about it because they see the number again or the triangle? And this is where I'm just like, especially as Gen Zers, like we kind of learn through fun. We learn through, like short term or, short form things of like fun that makes things like, want to continue doing things that give you like that dopamine rush, right? And this is where I came up with the idea of like, okay, I think Bitcoin is really fun. Now it can be considered black and white, and it's kind of like, a very complex thing, and it is. But at the same time, we need to simplify that. We need to make it in a way that's accessible for like even kids to understand, because money, when I was a kid, was taught the wrong way. And we're going to get more into that too, is where like they teach you to save your money. What does saving your money really mean? Why would I save my money in something that they're going to, continue to create more of? That doesn't make any sense. And that's the problem that I was like seeing in so many of like, my friends, like, ways of viewing like the flawed system. So I set on this journey and maybe like 2 months ago in like August, and I wanted to make a mobile app that was interactive and teaches Bitcoin and teaches you about the simplistic things that make it the best money ever. Think of it like the Duolingo of Bitcoin, right? Where you're, interacting through like different like quests. And like you said, you've played it a little bit. So, you're going through like the quizzes, you're going through the matching games and everything. And you get that dopamine rush where you're like, oh, I just earned points and I'm still learning about Bitcoin at the same time. I'm going to remember some of these things that I'm doing in the game to be able to like, have that recollection in the future and say, oh, this is what Bitcoin is. It's not just this number. It's not just this triangle. It's this actual network. And it's a currency that connects me with the entire world and releases me from the trap of, the government control or bank control or just, that fiat vortex that we're in.
I think you've done a really, really cool job at making sure that it's also something that is for all ages. Yes, Gen Z might be, your main target, and that's the main focus of this podcast as well. So I am going to focus on, what Odyssey means for Gen Z. But for anyone that's watching this who, isn't Gen Z, it's still a great way to start learning. It's still a great way to solidify your knowledge, maybe even quiz yourself. And honestly, I've tried it out. I'd recommend it to some of my younger cousins who are maybe 12 or 13 years old. So it's super cool. It's really, really cool to see what you're building. And Bitcoin education is exactly the kind of thing that we need. And I don't think that anyone else has created something similar yet. So I am so excited to see where Odyssey is going to take you. And I feel so honored to have you on the podcast so early on, because I just know 5 years down the line, I'm going to have you on again. And Odyssey is going to be super huge. It's basically going to be Duolingo. I mean, it's going to be so cool. So let's talk about the process of building, because entrepreneurship is so cool. And I think with the world that we're headed into with, AI coming into play, and then we have Bitcoin, there's going to be a lot more room for people to start creating things that add value to the economy and to the world. So for starters, I mean, what's it been like building, going through brainstorming your ideas, going through different versions of the app, sharing progress, getting feedback and everything? What is that process really like?
It's been a journey. It's definitely been a journey. And for those who may, follow me on Twitter, I've actually been building it in public, posting daily wins and my progress and everything within this. And that's been super surreal, seeing all the feedback, especially from Bitcoiners and even people who I'm trying to kind of orange pill now. Building's definitely been hard, definitely balancing a full-time job and still coming, after my 9 to 5, my 5 to 9 is still going to be kind of building a little bit more. And I'm just someone told me early on, you have to remember why you started. And, I had, this kind of reflection period when I turned 25. It was what is my purpose going to be to this world? What am I going to give back to the world? And I really felt like this is one of the ways where I can give back. I can, teach people about Bitcoin. You need to have, Bitcoin shouldn't be niche. It was designed to be global. It's supposed to be for everyone. And that's what I really want it to be. It shouldn't be for the tech bros who are on Twitter or know about these certain spaces. It should be for everyone, right? And this is where, I wanted to, have that motivation where it's going to continue to keep me disciplined and, continue making me allowed to, keep working on this. Yeah, building's been great. I've had, lots of ups and downs. I've had a lot of feedback from people saying one of the really big things that I got back early on was that there was too many words. Somebody mentioned that again, learning this app is would be great, but sometimes it's a little wordy. And that was one of the very, very first innovations. The one that you're seeing now is way different from what it was when it first started. And, even when you're learning about Bitcoin, I wouldn't recommend that you read big black and white book, something like the Bitcoin Standard written by, Saifedean Amos. This is, you can learn about Bitcoin through this, but it needs to be fun. It needs to be something that wants to keep you engaged and motivated to be able to do that. So, having to study different apps like Duolingo, which I, have been focusing in, trying to branch off of, has been giving me inspiration and motivation to be able to put more things in it that make it more interesting and making it the best app that you said. And like you said, I have a super big plan for what I'm going to do in the future with Odyssey and even more Bitcoin learning tools and resources that I'm going to provide to the world.
Who is your target audience with Odyssey? What are you hoping to accomplish?
Target audience is definitely everyone, for sure. I really want it to be kids, really, because the things about money that people don't really understand is they think that it's how do I put this? The thing with money that or even I was even kind of thinking about this going back maybe a week ago. I was remembering how they taught money as a kid. They were oh, save your money, put your money in a piggy bank, right? I remember I had this cool piggy bank that I got when I was 7 years old. and I would like love to find like coins and put it in there. And it was one of the electronic piggy banks too, where it like show like the balance and everything. And I wanted to get like this really cool toy. And eventually one day I put enough coins into it where it gave me, I think I was at like $15 or something, right? And I was like, Mom, I have enough money to go buy this toy. I go to the store, but like I said, like I had a bunch of coins and it took me like a lot of time to be able to get that. The price of the toy went up. And that was my first time actually seeing like, wait, I thought it was supposed to stay the same price. People told me to save my money, but you see that inflation, you see the taxes and all these other things have like kind of limited me from being able to gain something that I actually wanted and save for. That's not how money should be taught. You should be taught to, opt into a money that has the three functions, which are medium of exchange, store of value, a unit of account. Um, it has six good properties. It needs to be durable. It needs to be uniform. It needs to be portable. It needs to be scarce. It needs to be durable. It needs to be acceptable. Kids don't learn this. This is something that I had to learn after I graduated college. Like this is what I didn't learn this until like literally when I really started, understanding Bitcoin. And this is how we need to like, kind of teach like the next generation. Our generation obviously still has a lot to learn. Millennials are still learning as well, but we need to really start Bitcoin education as early as we can.
It's really cool to see you bring up that point of the finish line keeps moving further and further. With just an example of a toy when you were a kid, because when we think about inflation, we think a lot about the price of a house, the price of a car, and even like tuition and things like that. But it's so important to see that this goes down to a toy for a kid. This goes down to something that you would think is so basic and almost a necessity, right? Like you're gonna want to buy toys for your kids, and if you're a kid, you're gonna want a toy. So I think it's just insane. And looking back on just my childhood and my experience with money, it was a little bit different because I think I had a little piggy bank. I had one that was like a minion one, and it had a little like key thing and a little like pin code, and it was also an electronic one. And I would save in that, but also I never really cared too much about saving. So once I saw that it got to like $5, if I heard the ice
If you
cream
want to
truck in
spend
the
it,
neighborhood,
yeah.
I was going to get an ice cream. And I think it's really this epidemic of financial, I don't want to say financial illiteracy because I think that's an unfair term to use for kids, like they're literally like 7 or 8 years old, but this epidemic of them just not knowing anything about money is literally getting worse with the generations. So I'm 19, so I'm a few years younger than you are, but there's already such a difference in the way that we viewed money in our childhoods. And looking at my cousins who are, 7, 8, between like 7 and 11, they view money completely differently. And that's why I think that having something like Odyssey is so cool, and it's almost the perfect app to put your kids on and get them to start learning about Bitcoin because it's a game. So
Can I say something really
yeah,
quickly?
yeah.
So I had you had Gen Z BTC on the podcast, and he said a quote that I like it kind of like blew my mind a little bit because, like you're saying, like kids don't know. They're not really taught the right way. They're only gonna do what they're taught. And he said Bitcoin doesn't turn you into a mindless consumer. It turns you into a thoughtful saver. Because knowing that it is scarce, that you'll only ever have like, 21 million Bitcoin in circulation. And like if you were to, spend this Bitcoin, not saying that you shouldn't spend Bitcoin, but it makes you think twice about it, right? Because like now that Bitcoin is going to be back into the circulation. They're going to print more dollars. Like that's going to happen regardless. And this is where like you have that mindset where you're like, a kid and you're like, oh, I'm just going to get more money anyway. And that kind of causes that problem where you're seeing things like start to go up in more price and price and price and so on. So yeah, that was a really good quote that he came up with.
Yeah, Jordan's awesome. He's got a great channel, and I really did enjoy talking to him. And it's cool to just talk with other Gen Z and see the different perspectives because we all have different bangers, different one-liners that I just love talking about, love hearing. So coming back to Bitcoin, coming back to Odyssey, what do you, for someone who wants to start building inside the Bitcoin ecosystem, for someone who wants to start just working with Bitcoin maybe as a career, what opportunities do you see in this space? I know this might be kind of a loaded question, but just like what are your thoughts on what Bitcoin entrepreneurship might look like going down the line?
Great question. So even Odyssey, the app that I'm building, I'm trying to build like an entire like tech venture called Horizon BTC, and this is going to be like an overarchy of like all the service and products that I want to like eventually create and everything else, right? Um, the first thing that you need to do is just find what the problems are. Like I saw that the big problem was Bitcoin education, and now that we've kind of like identified that, like I had this space now to be able to like create Odyssey where people can now learn about Bitcoin in a way that is fun and interactive. Okay, there's more problems within that, right? Sometimes people don't know about like like even like Bitcoin calculators, they may not know like that quick conversion rate right away. They may not know like, have like, easy access to like the blockchain and want to like verify trends. Like there's so many things within Bitcoin, and it's this ever evolving thing that there's going to be more and more problems and there's going to be more and more solutions. The first thing is identify the problem. And then second thing is find the solution. And then the third thing is just start building it, right? I look up to guys like, Jack Mallers and like what he's doing with Strike. I look up to guys like, Jack Dorsey with what he's doing with Block. And like now he's just enabled like, merchants to be able to like, accept the Bitcoin. Like he already had it with Cash App where like the problem was being able to buy Bitcoin. Now we need to have this, system where the, actual like, society can now operate within Bitcoin purchases and like, continue to like spread that out. So like, there's going to be a lot of problems. There's going to be a lot of solutions. So identify them and just start, just get it out there and just start.
It's a really, really great clip. I'm definitely going to use that as the promo for this episode because it's so great to see a little bit of hope and a little bit of light for our futures because Gen Z, we're coming of age at a time where the job market is looking like looking like something that we've never even seen before, right? Like we've got so much displacement happening already, and you can bring up the point that this happened 20 years ago with Y2K and 20 years before that, and going all the way back to like the Industrial Revolution and the invention of like the assembly line or whatever. So yes, displacement has happened before, but right now it's happening at a rate that we haven't even seen ever. I mean, if we look at AI itself, the growth in AI has been practically exponential in just the past 4 or 5 years. Not even 4 or 5 years, like 2 or 3 years. If I think back to 2023 when I was graduating, if I think back to like 2023 when I was graduating high school, right? ChatGPT was coming around, and I'm like I was sort of half using it for just like fun and stuff, but now it's like ChatGPT is a tool that we use in college to study. It's something that I know some of my friends that use ChatGPT to just write their code. They use it to do their assignments. So it's just the exponential rate of growth in adoption that we've seen has been incredible. And that is starting to scare a lot of Gen Z. A lot of Gen Z. I'm not going to say, those that are studying computer science or data science in particular. Like this is something that spans across a lot of disciplines. And even if, you didn't go to college, even if you do work blue collar, like there are people that are super, super scared of what this new world is going to look like. So where I'm going with this, like I basically just want to ask you, I want to start talking about what do you think in 5 years, like the new world might be looking like in terms of, Bitcoin education, Bitcoin adoption, maybe even like, what are we seeing AI as in about 5 years?
Not for sure. It's kind of funny how you say like you were using like ChatGPT like when you were in high school. Really, that's so crazy because it didn't come out until like after I graduated. So I really don't even know what school is like now, like with AI, like and what it's like now. Like that's actually crazy. Funny enough, I was talking to like my friend who's a teacher now. She teaches second grade, and she's like, "Yeah, now the kids all use like iPads in classes." And I'm like, "They're using what now?" Because like I didn't get my first like technology for like school until like my freshman year of high school. So now we can see now that second graders are obviously going to be dispersed in like this world of advanced technology and everything else. it's just super, super mind blowing, right? But going into like how this is going to change our world in the next 5 years, I think it's actually going to help us and make us even like, more productive as well. It is scary in a sense where like now we have like, AI that can kind of like replace certain jobs. That is a fact. They can replace certain jobs, but like now we have, you know, the ability for people to create new jobs, right? Like me building Odyssey, like I'd be lying to you if I said I didn't use AI to help me build this. And it's helped me build this from what I started 2 months ago to where it is now. Like that isn't possible without AI and like, the work that I've been putting into like, still work with it. I think it's going to bring in like more innovation and more, entrepreneurs who are now going to be able to like run their own businesses and be able to like, learn even faster and, be able to like, just scale things at a rate that hasn't been done before. I also think it is going to be scary in a sense where, like I said, like different displacements of jobs are going to be distributed into different ways. Like different jobs will either be eradicated or they'll look very different from what it is. I'm still hopeful of that future, and I feel like Gen Z, especially, like we've already inherited a financial system that is broken where people fear that they will not be able to like have be able to own houses in the future because of like this wealth gap and just all of these like traditional paths to wealth that have been changed now. But again, I still feel like there's really big opportunities, especially with Bitcoin, especially learning Bitcoin. I feel like I really hope that it's going to be taught in schools very early on, because it's going to give people again money that they can truly trust. It's going to get money that they can truly trust, where they know that they're not working for money that's going to be inflated away whenever they do get a job, or if they do get a job, the case may be. I'm looking forward to the future, and I really think it's going to like just change a lot of things for the better.
This is a sentiment that I really hope to see an increase in just Gen Z in particular. And there's a quote, and I bring up this quote a lot on this channel, but Jack Mallers says, "Why are you working for a money that they can just print in the government, right?" Or something along the lines of that. So I really, really do think with the increase in AI in the next coming years is also going to bring an increase in Bitcoin adoption, because to be able to create, to be able to have freedom to add value to the economy and to the world, you need to have a money that isn't going to erode as you're focusing on building. And I think a lot of the problems that we're seeing now with a lot of startups and a lot of just companies is that people start and they quit. They stop working on what they're building because of they haven't been able to quit their full-time job because they need some source of income, or they're unable to fund it, or a lot of issues that relate to just coming back to the fact that we don't have a money that is working for us anyway. Do you think Bitcoin could fix this problem?
Bitcoin fixes every problem with money. It fixes every problem with money. Money needs to be, I'm going to say the properties and what money needs to be able to do again. Money needs to be a medium of exchange. I need to be able to give you something of value for something of that is either a good or a service. It needs to be a store of value, whether that means I should be able to save my money, right? Where, we had that example about the piggy banks, right? Where I save my money in there, but it's not really a good store of value because it's losing value. It's going to be losing value over time. And it also needs to be a unit of account where it is able to measure how much something is worth. Bitcoin solves as money evolved, they're just created like new problems, right? So I'm just gonna have like something like written down that I want to say, right? So when we first started off with like commodities, that barter system and everything, right? Everyone wanted them, but they're not necessarily portable, or like people didn't necessarily like kind of buy into that, because it's kind of hard to trade 10 chickens for one cow. Like it's a fair exchange, but it's not really like the best medium of exchange. So then we moved to coins. Coins are portable, but sometimes they become like too heavy to kind of move and things, right? And then we moved to paper, where paper was backed by the gold standards, or like the gold standard, or like things of value, where now the problem with this is like the governments control them. And then we moved to instant and global money, which is like now we have like the credit cards, we have like electronic banking. We have the Zells, we have the Cash Apps, and so on, right? But now we have that bank middleman. So one of the problems, even like which we were kind of like going with, is like I was buying a used laptop a while ago, and it was about a couple $1,000s, right? So I had sent the money to the person, and I got the laptop and everything, but then I was going to like meet someone else, and like I was paying him back for like food, and I was trying to pay him through Zelle through my bank, right? Because he doesn't take Bitcoin. He doesn't take Bitcoin, unfortunately. But hopefully after he sees this podcast, he'll understand why he should. I was getting like a notification from my bank saying like you are not allowed to spend money anymore. Like I'm like, what do you mean? What do you mean I can't spend money? Like I have the money, but I can't spend it. The money that I own in my bank isn't necessarily mine to a degree, because it is again controlled by a bank middleman, where I have these limits. Anytime that I want to transact with someone, they need to know. Anytime that I'm going over a limit that I want to go over, they're going to try to prevent me, and they're creating more and more problems. And Bitcoin finally gives us a way to just eradicate all of that. You enter a network in cyberspace is how you can kind of see it, where like you are permissionless. You are able to, transact with anyone. Again, you have money that has value, that will keep its value. Bitcoin is the greatest performing asset for the past 16 years. There's never been an asset or commodity or just anything that has had a better performance from zero point 0.01 to over 100 plus $1,000. And not even saying that I really like even care about the price, but it just like sometimes I look at the price and I'm like, it kind of makes sense why it's worth $100,000, because you get to finally escape the vortex that you're in, the trap that you're in, into a new network that has never been attacked before, or necessarily hacked. It hasn't been hacked before. It hasn't, it's still here. It's to take off Bitcoin, you have to take off the internet. And the internet was obviously a big solution that solved so many problems now. And when you see Bitcoin as that layer on top of the internet, you can see that, again, it is solving all of the problems of money. It gives you freedom. It gives you censorship resistant, and it just eliminates a lot of different problems. So sometimes people say like, one of the ways to solve your problem is just by like going to the gym, or just like whatever. Like I would say like another good way to solve problems is by owning Bitcoin, just owning Bitcoin,
I think that's a great like overarching theme for the whole episode. Number one, don't wait for permission. Number two, just buy Bitcoin. Honestly, like I don't think it can get clearer than that. It really is the path to financial independence, number one, but second, financial freedom. And that's something that our generation thinks about so often, because we see all of this, content on social media with the rise in finance gurus and influencers during COVID and the subsequent years, right? We see this rise in people being like, this is how I retired at 30. This is how I became financially free by 30. And it's them investing or like day trading in just this long list of companies. And it's a whole strategy that they've written out, and they start selling a course. They're like, buy this and I can teach you how to retire, and then you'll be able to like buy a yacht and live on a beach and everything. But it doesn't get simpler than just buying Bitcoin. And the sentiment that I try to really, really drive home and really, drill into the Gen Z that's watching this, who is curious or trying to learn about Bitcoin, is that yes, it is a tool for financial freedom, but it is also a step towards adopting a more fair form of money. And we live in a generation that has seen a rise in socialism and fairness and equality, or has seen like a want for socialism and fairness and equality. As opposed to everyone that's come kind of prior to us. And that is definitely a really good thing, but it is also a really bad thing if the blame is being placed somewhere that isn't correct. So where I'm trying to go with this is, we have a lot of hatred for, I think, the rising sentiment is capitalism is bad. Billionaires are evil. No one can become an ethical billionaire because having that much money in itself, isn't ethical in the first place. And that's what a lot of people tend to believe. The way I view it, I think the problem in itself is that we have a broken money, because it does not matter how much fiat you can accumulate, does not matter how much USD you can hold. Your money is not going to work for you. Your money is never ever going to be fair. So with that, I know you're building something in Bitcoin education, and you're trying to get, you said kids, but I really do think Gen Z is included in that as well, especially because we're like, early 20s, late 20s, like we're in our 20s now, basically. So Gen Z is at an age where we need to start learning about money, and we need to start learning about Bitcoin. But we also have all of these other things that we're thinking about. We place a lot of emphasis on politics and on building a better world, and one that's fair for everyone, one that is better for our future children and things like that. How can we use Bitcoin education to fight some of the incorrect blame that is being placed, or to help Gen Z feel better about some of the things that they're seeing in the world?
I think Bitcoin is one of the best ways to unite people. So when it comes to like just even what it stands for and like why it even exists today, it was because of like the mistakes of like previous generations. The 2008 collapse when like the banks like were making bad bets, and like they ended up getting bailed out, but the money didn't, it went to the banks first, but then it went to like the common folk last, and like they ended up losing their houses. Still they lost their pension, they lost like a lot of different things, right? And Bitcoin was that solution in response to that, right? Bitcoin has been placed for all of us to be able to have like that freedom again, where now we don't have to opt into what the bank says or what the government says. And not necessarily saying like they're bad people in a sense, but it's just like they've caused a lot of problems, but they can be fixed with this Bitcoin now. We now see treasury companies like MicroStrategy and others who are now trying to become better banks, with that use of Bitcoin, right? We see now that you can hold things like MicroStrategy in like a 401k, and you can like kind of trust that they have that Bitcoin. Even if you don't like want to necessarily have a 401k, or you want to like have like something where that you trust it and you truly own it, you can just have Bitcoin. These are just different ways that it's like kind of uniting people and kind of giving them their power back. Bitcoin gives you your power back. You finally have your own money. It's transparent. No bank can freeze it, no government can print more of it, no company controls it. Like, and honestly, it's like still early. We have a way to really unite the world with Bitcoin. Countries, who have like hyperinflation, like a Venezuela, to some degree, like there are countries in Africa, like Nigeria and so on, where like, the money continues to get inflated. They can then go to a Bitcoin standard now, where they can like rebase their currency off of something that has value if you don't necessarily have gold, because it is for everyone. You don't necessarily have to um, do anything special to get it. As long as you have an internet connection, like you can have Bitcoin, you can mine Bitcoin, you can now rebuild your entire ecosystem with this thing that is now giving you your power back, right? um Sometimes like in when it comes to again like uniting people sometimes, right, going back to the number thing, and why again like I really feel like Bitcoin education is important, because I don't want people to really see a number. Bitcoin isn't necessarily a number. When you look at that $116,000 price in USD, if you just simply like convert whatever economic value you have, which is like United States dollars in this case, right? Let's say I just keep my $100 in Bitcoin today. I know for certain that there's only ever going to be 21 million of this, but that $100 now puts me in a network where I'm connected globally with so many different people, and have that freedom again, where I have money that truly belongs to me, that cannot be confiscated away. That's something that I really feel like has a lot of power that people don't necessarily understand, because they may think that it's not a lot, but it's something. Like, just as long as you're within the network that Bitcoin has given us the opportunity to have, as long as you have an internet connection, like that is so important, and it connects us to be able to like have ways to like fund medical expenses, or things where taking family vacations, being able to like do things where like we've been stripped of that issues with the inflation again, and just issues that have been caused by previous generations. Like, we get that back. Gen Z gets that back. And especially like us, the young people right now, we're able to like get in our jobs. Like, we can change that. We can change the lives for our children's children. um even me, I was like kind of like thinking about the Bitcoin that I have. I was like, I don't even know if I'm going to be the one to like spend the Bitcoin. It's a way for me to be able to give back to my lineage, God willing, and a legacy where like, my kids don't have to worry about the challenges that I had to endure. Like it just solves those problems for them already, and they're not even here yet, So yeah, I'm really passionate about Bitcoin, and like it gives us again like just that freedom again to like just escape a lot of the problems that have been caused, and we can't really change the past, but we can change the future. We can't change the past, but we can change the future.
It's really evident that you're so passionate about Bitcoin, which is exactly why I wanted to have you on, because it makes a difference. It really makes a difference when we give opportunity and when we give a platform to people who are so convicted with what they believe that they start building. And I love that you brought up this point of the cycle essentially ends with us, because yes, a lot of Gen Z is so angry at what the previous generations have done, and there's the whole climate crisis, the fact that the environment for us and our future generations is basically screwed because of everything that happened 50 years ago. But that doesn't have to be the case, and I think that is a great thing that more Gen Z needs to know and learn about. It's just this thing of building generational wealth and having Bitcoin be something that you can pass down to your kids and they can pass down to their kids, because that it's only ever going to go up. It's only ever going to increase in value, and it's only going to get more helpful and more beneficial. So, with that, just before we wrap things up and kind of bring all of the conversation home a little bit, what is your advice for Gen Z, students or workers, whatever it is, whatever they're studying or doing or building, to actually get started with it could be with Bitcoin, it could be with their careers, it could be with anything, but just to get started?
Give it a chance. Just give Bitcoin a chance. I'm going to say it again. People will see either a number, they're going to see a triangle. Really just start seeing a web that connects other people to like each other and everything, right? And you need to be at least like, willing to at least do the research and, take on, an opportunity to be able to like learn about it more. And this is why I created something like Odyssey, where it gives people that chance now to like, okay, this is what Bitcoin it is for itself. Like we've had again, like, books like the Bitcoin Standard, but like we need something that's going to resonate with Gen Z. Like, I still use TikTok. Like I'm 25. I still use TikTok. I use Instagram. I use like, all the social medias. And this is what like, this is what we grew up on, and we might as well just have something again that like we're used to, and like we connect with, and we have some way to like um, learn with. Just give it a chance. Just start. Whether you have 100 and however much, I don't even really check the price of Bitcoin anymore, because it doesn't matter. I only know that I know forever that one Bitcoin is going to be equal to one Bitcoin. That's the most important formula that you need to remember. It's not that one United States dollars equals or however many Bitcoin or whatever the case may be. You just need to remember that one Bitcoin equals one Bitcoin. Definitely don't think that it's too late, because it will never be too late, because there's only going to ever be 21 million Bitcoin. And the thing again, where it comes into like the properties of money is Bitcoin is divisible. Money is divisible. Just because you don't have $100 doesn't mean you can't have a $1 bill, a $5 bill, a $10 bill, and so on. You can just convert the money that you have today into Bitcoin, and you can store it and you can pass it down, and no one will ever be able to take it from you, as long as you have your seed phrase stamped and written down, or whatever the case may be. It is yours. That's the thing that's again what makes Bitcoin so powerful, is that it is truly yours, as long as you have internet. But just learn, start, give it a chance, and just be accepting of like other people who like come into the space and try to like share it with you. Like if I'm really friends with someone, or I care about them, I'm gonna bring up Bitcoin, and be willing to accept like what those people have to say, and yeah, just be open.
It's a really, really great message. I get it. I get the whole thing of being the Bitcoin person. I'm the Bitcoin girl in my friend group. Literally, I was on campus like Wednesday maybe, and I had stopped to get some food at one of the restaurants that we have. And this girl was like, I know you. You're that girl that runs the Bitcoin podcast. And I was like, whoa, okay. And I'm racking my brain. I'm thinking like, do I know you? Like, I don't remember your name or anything like that. But I like felt like maybe I recognized her. I don't know. And she was like, yeah, like I've seen your podcast. And I'm like, that's crazy. But it really is so cool to be in coming of age at a time where we have this really awesome currency that fixes almost every problem that we are experiencing and seeing with the world, and gives us an opportunity to truly focus on what it is that we want to focus on. And that's the point that I try to hammer into anyone who's Gen Z and curious about Bitcoin. Because again, like I'm not going to try and convince you to buy. I don't think that's what Orange Peel and what a lot of Gen Z Bitcoiners are trying to do anyway, because we have ample people for that. But we really need to have these conversations amongst ourselves, because we don't learn as well from people that are older or people that are younger as we do from people that are our age, which is why, again, like I just had to have you on the podcast. I mean, Tosin, this is just awesome. And I really do think what you're doing with Odyssey is exactly what Gen Z and Bitcoin education and even Gen Alpha need. I mean, it's fun, it's human, it's a game, and it's built by someone our age for people our age. So for everyone listening, definitely go check out Odyssey if you want to understand what Bitcoin is and you felt like it's too complicated, you don't have time to read. As Tosin mentioned, no one should be reading through a whole bunch of like text to try and understand what Bitcoin is, when it really can get so simple. And Tosin, if someone wants to, reach out to you, kind of get in touch with you a little bit, is there somewhere that they can find you?
For sure, you can follow me on all my social media. X at Tosin X Ogunjobi. You can follow like Horizon BTC, which is also on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. I'm trying to get into like the Bitcoin content creation space as well, to like make things more fun and accessible again for other people to be able to find it. But if you have any questions, again, like I can talk about Bitcoin for hours and hours and hours and hours. I will answer any question, and will definitely provide like any help, and even collaborate with other people as well if they're looking to come into the space. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, that's really cool. I recently just saw all the reels you've been posting on Instagram, and they're super great. Super great. So it's also, anyone that's watching this that you have your own podcast, definitely get Tosin on. He's a great guest. I had so much fun researching him and looking at everything that he's built and asking and drafting these questions. So with that, last question, and if you've been keeping up with this podcast, you know that I like to ask everyone this, and you can use this as an opportunity to promote Odyssey or promote your own kind of thing that you're building. If there was one resource that you could recommend to someone who wanted to learn about Bitcoin today, and this can be a podcast, a book, anything, what would that be?
Let me think. Definitely download Odyssey. Go to the App Store right now. Just type in Odyssey hyphen your Bitcoin journey, and you'll definitely find my app. I'm still building it in public, and like you guys are going to continue to see me just innovate and make it even better and better and better for you to be able to really continue your Bitcoin journey, and just it makes it fun. Definitely the Orange Peel podcast. Nicki, the host there, she does a really good job. Bringing on pretty good guests and having them tell like their Bitcoin stories. I think she's pretty cool, and definitely just looking up like just Michael Saylor just talking about Bitcoin. He may be like, a little older and, a little gray, but like, he has a lot of wisdom, and it definitely spoke to me, especially when I was like upon going on my journey. Yeah, definitely those three.
Awesome. Well, thank you for mentioning Orange Peel. I think that's super cool. And I can't lie, I'm like super flattered. But yeah, Sailor series is great. Robert Breedlove, we've definitely talked about that on this channel before, but if you haven't caught it yet, I'm going to link that in the description, and it's about time that you get on it. It's about time that, you actually start looking into the things that these people that I have are recommending, because it's only up from here. We're going to keep moving. So again, to my audience, anyone who watched this and maybe this helped you understand Bitcoin a little bit further, or this conversation helped you think a little bit differently about Bitcoin, share it with a friend. Leave a comment below with like something that surprised you, something that you liked, or a question that you might have for me or for Tosin. he can check the comments if he has time. Otherwise, I'll always send things for him, and we can get y'all in touch. We can get any questions that you have answered, because sharing and having conversations and asking is going to be how we grow this movement, especially for Gen Z. So with that, thank you for tuning in to the Orange Peel podcast today. I'm your host, Nicki, and I'm going to see you next time. Until then, stay curious, stay skeptical, and stay orange pilled.